Blitzers, it's Ronan. Welcome back to the channel. We've had update 8.1 come through this weekend or towards the end of the week. And by the way, gravity mode is starting in 16 hours, so yay. Wanted to talk about the update and see if we can chat about the meaningful parts of it. We'll use Blitz Hanger for this. And a lot of things have been updated, more updates, I think, than normal. I think it's sometimes these in-between ones have that. First, the Badger. The Badger had improvement when rotating the turret a little bit, actually quite a bit, and speed forward is now 34. I have a replay for the Badger. I'll talk about it more there. I do think these are meaningful changes. I still think it's a piece of junk, and I hate it, but those are meaningful changes. I can see the Hori got nerfed on this Traverse. The AMX 5120 got nerfed on the pen, and that is the cannon. That's the low cannon, so it doesn't affect the 5120. It does affect a couple of the other French tanks, including the ARL 44 and a couple of others. The Tier 8 T28 had a buff of 5 on the pen of its lower cannon. Irrelevant, but that is the cannon used by a lot of other tanks. You can also see the Hori, the Tier 8 TD, had quite a bit of a buff in both effective power and to weight and traverse speed and engine power. T-34-2 got a nerf on the dispersion of an irrelevant cannon. The 50-100, like I said before, that's also not its top cannon, I don't believe, so it doesn't matter. Pantera, slight change. T-20 got buffed pretty meaningfully on HP. And most of the Tier 7 mediums got buffed in a variety of ways, and so that is worth revisiting. The T-20, you can see, improved in HP and DPM. The T23-3, I think this is actually wrong on here. It did get a buff on the HP, but according to Blitz Stars, it also got a buff, I believe, on the it did on the side armor. The armor of the T23-3 went from 76, 63, 63 to 90, 80, 64. That should be meaningful. The hull side was increased from 50 to 51 as well, and that has to do with this getting overmatched by big cannons. So the T23-3, I actually really like the tank, and have for a long time. No one else seems to like it. That buff may be meaningful. I did not get a replay in that, but whatever. T29, the most open, broken, OP texture tank probably this day and age, is even more broken. They improved slight change in the rate of fire and reload time. The M682E1, good tank. Looks like it got a traverse speed buff, which is nice. T25AT got a little bit of a nerf. T25-2, a little bit of a that's the cannon that got a tiny buff. The Tier 7 Super Hellcat, looking forward to that. And then, they're just showing it to us. HTC T28 did get a nice little buff on pen for APCR and its regular AP. That is a nice little difference there. LTTB got kind of a massive nerf on its speed. I'm not sure what it did to deserve it, but it is going to be slower. The T43, you can see, in T4045 and the Rudy all got HP buff. The IS got both nerfed and buffed. And this is kind of the same thing. If you look at the IS in the KV3, they kind of have similar improvements on aim time, and their weight was increased, at least for the IS, but then the effective power to weight ratio, because of the weight increase, did slow down. KV3, I do have a replay of. I want to talk about it because I do think this is meaningful. The aim time had a massive change. On here, it went from 3.26 to 297, and that, as you know, is how Blitz Hanger calculates it. And also got a nice buff for dispersion and dispersion while moving a little bit. It did slow down a little bit on its traverse, so it's a little bit slower. I did not notice the speed bump, the speed nerf at all. The 100M1 got a traverse speed adjustment. 122.44 had a bigger adjustment on aim time and dispersion. The 122.44 may be more playable now. The gun used to be kind of difficult to land shots, especially at distance, so that might be good. A little dispersion improve on the 122S. SP1C gets buffed every other game. It's still a terrible tank. You can actually play it. This should be interesting. An interclip reload looked like it is a little bit faster. That should be helpful. The Tier 7 Panther and J Panther got a nerf, one on the HP. You can see there by 20. That's irrelevant. The J Panther did get a little slower. That makes sense. The Centimille needs a buff so bad, and it did on its movement. I don't think this is going to make it that much playable. It still needs other things to be good. Comet, I played it. Didn't notice a speed buff, but it's there. I think Droodle's covered the Black Prince. It's got the cannon is worse on the dispersion and aim time, but it got a 5 kph buff on the speed. You can see the Challenger there if anybody cares. It's got a little bit of a weight increase, so it's a little slower. That's not going to be meaningful. Chai-Ri, again, probably relevant to Snowman plates. It's actually a good tank, the Chai-Ri. And it got a good buff on the power to weight due to the engine buff there, so that's nice. The Ice 2 Pravda, I don't have that tank, but improvement in aim time. The T-34-1 got an HP increase, a meaningful HP increase of 150, and an improvement in its aim time. But it did get a nerf on the pen of the AP. So maybe that altogether, it's still one of the, probably the best medium in the tier. Right around there, the Leo's also exceptional. Obviously, you get the Drac. That is going to be interesting to see what the 34-1 is. I did not play it yet, but maybe I'll update that later. IS-2 got improvement both on aim time and dispersion. And then the T-34-2 GFT, the tier 7, got a little bit of a slowdown. I think I didn't cover here is on these two tanks. The 1357 got a really nice buff on the pen, and it needed it. Its AP went from 143 to 160 and 195 to 220 on the APCR, and obviously you're using a calibrated shells there because it just has vents. So that is going to really mean the 1357 is going to be much more effective. It's a tricky tank to play. Rebel loves it, but that is going to really be good. I got to get that puppy out. M445, the tricky tank, easily argued this is one of the worst tanks in the game. Not anymore. Well, maybe still. It got a nice DPM buff. You can see the pen, etc. there. And then for the AP, really got mainly improvements on the pen. It already had good pen, I thought, and definitely on the Top Gun there. You know, the APCR pen is going to be wild at 259 if that's accurate. That is really high. You can see that the HE did get a pen nerf, which is strange. I'm actually wondering if they changed the cannon caliber. That's what it is. They changed it to a 90 caliber. That is why. All right. Well, that makes sense. You can see that dispersion is a little bit better too. You know, they did give this tank a buff on the armor as well. I think that's shown below on Blitzstar. That's why it's not shown. I'll scoot down for it. P43 TER got a little tweaked. ELC Bisc did get a buff. It needs probably more. Predator got a good pen buff and an armor buff. And the ARL did get a nerf. Wheeler was asking for this the other day. From 212 to 200 on the AP. That shouldn't really matter. That's still an awful lot of pen for a tier 6 tank. All right, let's go down here to the tanks that matter. One thing that was of interest is the giant, massive, and disgustingly huge and disgusting in almost every way Vk45.03. It got a buff of 5 on the front armor. As you can tell, there is literally no difference whatsoever. 5 millimeters, no one cares. Made no difference. So for those of you who are more excited, let's take a look at the T23E3. And you can see this is the 8. And it did get a buff, and you can see it really on the turret. If you look closely, the turret turns yellow, orange on the sides there. I don't see much on the sides of the tank, but it should make it more effective. A little purple there on there. So that should be a nice change. I don't really care about the VK30D. I have that tank, but nobody plays it. The other buff that I think is really key here is the Vk45.03. Notice this is the previous. Notice the change in the turret. This tank used to have the problem that you really couldn't go haul down, and it stopped. It was getting murdered by everything in sight. This is quite a meaningful armor buff, quite an increase as well. I think that's going to be big. The Tankenstein, for those who care, got a little bit of a buff as well. And I think this is the AMX M445. So you see this is the previous version, and you can see a lot more orange reds there. That should be meaningful for that tank. I think the sides are going to be HE proof, which used to be a huge problem for the tank. The Vulcan, I don't know. I don't know what to think about that tank. I stopped playing it. This is the Predator. It's the weirdest tank. I bought this one during Christmas. Does look like there's a little bit of improvement, but not something I'm particularly excited about. So with that, let us jump into some replays. Okay, first replay up. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Badger. I played this thing 3 or 4 times trying to have a good game here, and the problem I have with the Badgers is just it needs an identity. I don't understand what the tank's supposed to do. It's actually, it would make a decent heavy if it was even more agile. It's still a gigantically long tank. and it turned like the Titanic. And this buff that they gave it on the dispersion and that is actually quite good. By the way, for those of you who have tried to climb this, I for some reason thought I saw a different line that maybe you can climb, but it's still not climbable. I love that spot. You can get there if you are interested by going in towards the end of the ridge and then backing up to it. In the Badger, I was not about to try to do that. I think this game is how you still have to play the Badger. You have to play very conservatively. It is a sniper, and it shouldn't be. It's got amazing front armor. You think of the T95, which I think more or less the Badger was probably conceived upon. The problem is you just don't. The armor is not reliable, and it just still turns. Side armor still is bad, and only having front armor like this makes sense only from something, in my opinion, that you're sniping from a great distance on. Otherwise, the armor doesn't really matter much. It doesn't make a very great difference. Now, the tank cannon is great. It's got a terrific cannon. The alpha's low, but DPM is high, and it does have terrific dispersion and other values. I like the cannon. I have no complaints about the cannon other than maybe the alpha for a tier 10. But here you go. So I am, as you can see, 216 meters away. I did switch it to APCR, and I am just going to pound this Maushan in the cheeks. He starts complaining here, which only makes it better. I think I land 2 or 3 in a row right in his cheeks from 270 meters. Not a lot of cannons can do that. There is report camper. Idiot. And there's 3 in a row in the cheeks from 270. I'm impressed by that. It continues to impress me. The cannon does. And there is an E100 easy shot there. Accidentally kept it on APCR. That was an accident. And then watch me bounce. I think I'm not exactly sure who was shooting me there. Could have been a variety of them. I told them to aim, and they aimed. Bad idea. So, the Badger still, again, this is the only way I've ever been successful with the tank. Others have been successful in other ways, not I, said the Fly. I have to hang back with it and snipe and go haul down. Now, haul down, it is one of the most incredible tanks. The armor on it, when you are hauled down, is incredible. But that's all it's good for. And certain maps, etc., you really can't do too much about it. There is another, I'm just sitting there bouncing shots all day long, and there's really nothing that they can do, especially at a distance. Again, the cannon can do it. The problem is that it's got low alpha, so when you're sniping, you want big alpha so you can land those shots and make a difference, especially with high explosive. So it doesn't have good high explosive, and it's from a distance, and you got to get all these shots in there. It just doesn't lend to being a very effective tank. That's just the bottom line of this thing. And I still remember buying a ton of crates for it. I'm still mad at how hard it was to get the tank. And it's still, in my opinion, probably one of the worst tier 10s in the game. Right along that with the E4 and some of the others. E4 may be better than it. This game is all but over. By the way, I think there's a glitch I just noticed here on... if you look at the Chieftain MK6, when I have APCR, I noticed the sides of it looked like they were saying that I couldn't pen the sides, which the Badger was going to pen the side of a Chieftain. You see that there? And I think they're trying to highlight the spaced armor, which it might have. I don't remember if it has spaced armor or not. But it shows up red there, which is incorrect, so I have no idea why. But there we go, and that is that. So, a decent game, bounced 2200, did about 3k damage, but this tank is just not it. It's just nothing special. That's all I can say about that. Now, I did have some replays on a tank. I mentioned the 4503. 4503 got a great buff, and it needed it. It was really outclassed by a ton of tanks in the tier. Obviously the Smasher and the Annihilator, but also some others like the KV3 and the T29, probably some other tanks I'm not thinking about. So this new buff makes the Vk43 a lot like a a lot like the basically a version of the Tiger 2. It really feels like the Tiger 2. It's got similar movement. It moves like it. It's got an accurate cannon. It's got terrific. It's got almost like the Panther 2 or whatever, where it's got good accuracy and a rapid firing gun. And I was actually trying to test it here against this Panther and see. I still took a shot. Maybe that was in the cheek. So that was a little. But the Panther itself has terrific guns, so that's not totally surprising. But you can see that the mobility of the tank. I've actually really liked this tank for years, and we used to play it much more before Tier 7 became a garbage fire. I think that there's a couple of things happening in Tier 7 that may allow you to start playing it again. And that's what I was going to talk about really too at the end of the video here. This game and that is you're starting to get some tanks that can stand up to the Annihilator and to the Smasher, which are potentially the Vk43, but definitely the KV3 and the T29, and obviously the Annihilator. I've also noticed the Wargaming obviously won't nerf the Annihilator because it is a gold tank. They've never nerfed the Smasher either, but what they're doing now, especially if you're platooning, is if you have an Annihilator Smasher tune or an Annihilator in a tune, you are getting an Annihilator. You're getting into this toxic, like everybody has an Annihilator, 3 Annihilators, Smasher in the lineup. And that is actually a way to balance the tanks because you're playing other Annihilators and Smashers. Notice this tank I've always enjoyed the Traverse. I mean, I can keep up with a slower LTTB, pound it for 200 and call it a day. This tank is mobile. It's got now decent armor. I need to test the armor out a bit more, but it really can move, and I love shooting every 5.4 seconds. 200-ish alpha. I find that to be useful in a heavy that's got this kind of accuracy. This game wasn't that special of a game or anything. I think it just kind of demonstrates the capabilities of the tank. And I will skip forward just to the end there. I think this turbo was just asking for it. And, I think I killed the turbo, but maybe I rammed the Jackson that was hiding. I will tell you guys, if you play this map often, I remember from years ago, someone did a video talking about that spot that Jackson was in. It's actually a good spot for a TD being all the way up. All right, so that is the VK45.03. Not for sale or anything, but if you have it in your garage, it might be worthwhile taking it out. And it has become good. Last replay, KV3. And we are in Winter Malinovka. This was with Tanky Poo. And kind of did what you do here, went to sea. And I think the key for me in this game is actually watching how to handle an Annihilator, which Tanky has one. And so Tanky has an Annihilator, so does the opposite team. The opposite team, it's kind of the way it typically goes. So the trick to the Annihilator is it's got terrible dispersion between the shots. Is pretty bad. So but the trick to it is if you get close to somebody, you can pound them with 600 alpha all the time. So it makes the tank pretty effective. It's well known for it. With a KV3, the armor is so strong that you're not going to get 3 of those shots in. By the way, there's the AMX M445. Notice there's quite a bit of red there. There never have been before. I was pretty surprised playing it. Didn't realize it was buff. And there you go. Now that player, I need to check if he was a good player or not. I think he was an okay player. The KV3 has just got awesome armor. So the problem that you got, so the AMX M45 had no problem with his very accurate cannon getting me my lower plate. But the Annihilator doesn't have the accuracy to get that shot in, to get 3 shots into the very small hole. And even if he's aiming all the way in, he's going to miss some of those shots because of the interclip dispersion. So I think that if you really want to play a tank that can hold up well to an Annihilator, you've got it. It's in the tech tree as I bounce that shot. I think the KV3 has always been a good tank. And this is kind of what it does. I get in between 2 tanks here. Obviously, I don't care about the AMX M4. I get a big shot into the Annihilator. He gets 1 shot into me at 166. That's what I needed. I can withstand that. I get another shot from the AMX. I knew he wouldn't do it, and I really needed to clear here. That was going to be my one desperate desire. And I get it with the lower plate on Annie pretty easily. Now I can turn my attention to that M6, I guess, not an M4, M6, who was just annoying me, bounces, and that is it. So the KV3, it's been strong forever. I didn't notice any speed difference in the nerf that it received, and I definitely noticed the cannon's accuracy improved, amongst other things. So you know, I think you got yourselves pretty good tech tree tank here. If, for those of you who want to counter the ante and don't have it or don't want to play it all the time, both of which make a ton of sense to me. This was a good game. Tanky, I always appreciate the tune. I think also because nice little win, and 22 to 39 damage. Pretty easy, sticking yourself between 3 tanks. Tanky died somehow early on, so I had to actually do something, which was fun. Well, sorry for the long video, not really. Hope you guys enjoyed it. This should give you a good update on everything that is important in the game in 8.1.